Hello, Martin.
Hello, Mark.
And hello, and welcome to another episode of In the Workshop with Mark Tunley, Question and Answers. And the date is the 17th of March 2022.
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, and a couple of days after the end of the river season.
Boo hiss.
Boo hiss, boo hiss. Now, you got another question for me?
Yeah.
What's your question, Martin?
Spines.
Spines.
I've heard about the spine of a rod.
Right, okay.
But even though I am fanatical about rods, I don't really know much about spines of rods. So
Right, yeah,
perhaps
okay.
you can explain to me why the spine of a rod is so important, if indeed it is important.
Yeah, okay. The term spine of a rod, it basically means... It's a bit of a misleading term for a start, but it's just a term that people use. It's actually should be the plane of least resistance or the preferred plane of bending. When a blank is manufactured, the cloth is wrapped, various layers, wrapped around a mandrel, and there seems to be, well, there is a joining, an over final layer. And at that point, it's obviously thicker than at other points. And that doesn't necessarily run dead straight down the rod. That can be, depending on the tapering and how the cloth was cut, that can spiral around the blank as well. So that creates a preferred plane of bending. When the rod is flexed, it naturally wants to go away from the stiffest point and bend to the most flexible point of a rod. So it's the plane of least resistance when you bend it. I'll do a demo in a sec, actually, because I've got a blank up there which we can have a roll.
Good.
So when I'm laying up a blank to be built on, I find its spine. So I'll roll it, and I'll just grab it now. And then hopefully, guys, you'll be able to see if I should kick this out of the way. And if I get in close here, yeah, you just about see. What I do is I basically just impart a bit of pressure onto the blank and I roll it in my hand, and that's quite strong here. And I'm going to roll it and it'll kick. You can
visibly see that, right?
You can physically see it kick, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's finding its preferred plane of bending, and there's usually two. Obviously, it's opposite sides of each other, 180 degrees. And then I'll find the one that's the softest, and that will actually become the spine, the back of the rod. So I'll just basically take a chronograph. I'm still here. I'll take a chronograph, I'll roll it, and then just mark the blank at that spine. So that basically makes the rod, let's disappear back over here for a sec. It makes the rod, the way it naturally wants to bend, the rings are actually aligned up with the way it naturally wants to bend. It's plane of least resistance. So when you cast, the rod will naturally say, well, I need to bend at my softest angle. And I've already placed the rings correctly. So no matter how hard you cast, the rod actually forces itself straight. Some people may have experienced, after several casts, that suddenly the tip section on a two-piece carp rod, say for example, is now sort of like it's moved around from the butt section. It's out of angle, and that's because it wasn't spined very well. Because under load, it's constantly trying to find its plane of least resistance and bend in that way. But you're trying to hold it in a different way.
Is this something that most manufacturers pay attention to?
No, not from my experience. Some do. It was very popular in the fly rod world, and still is, because you're casting a fly and it can kick the fly line a little bit because the rod is constantly trying to twist. And because of my original, started off in the fly rod world, I just naturally built on the spine. So all my coarse rods, carp rods, etc. And it just basically means they track true. When you start to load up, the rod basically just says, no, I'm going to bend in this way, which I've already built it dead straight. So they cast smooth. There's no kick.
So you're leveraging the rod at the rod's most comfortable.
Yeah. You're working with the way the rod wants to be bent, not working against it.
Yeah.
Most manufacturers, there's no consideration to that, especially in mass production. All they do is glue on a tip ring and then glue on a reel seat, and then as long as they line up the rest of the rings to the tip ring and the butt ring to the reel seat, it's job done. But they don't care how much the rod kicks or anything like that. They might look at it for true and straightness. So there's always this little compromise. But quite often the true and the straight of the rod and the spine do align up. So it's quite lucky in that way. So that, in essence, is a spine of a rod, or the plane of least resistance, or the preferred plane of bending.
So it's those marginal gains, really.
Yeah,
it's
just details.
It's the 2-3%
Yeah.
of casting accuracy where that can make a difference.
Yeah, it just makes the rod makes the rod work the way it wants to work. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just exactly the right thing to do. To do it any other way would just be wrong. It would make the rod twist. It's potentially more prone to failure as well, because the rod is constantly trying to twist. Now, remember I said earlier on about the way it overlaps and it doesn't naturally necessarily go dead straight down the spine. It can spiral as well. So what you do is when you're rolling a blank and finding it, you find the deep spine, because you might find if you're just bending the first little bit nice and gently, you say, well, there's the spine. But as you go deeper down into the thicker part of the blank, then you might find that that's actually moved over. So you always go down to where it's really, needed. And as I've just been doing it for so long, it's just one of those things when I pick up a blank, I inspect the blank first of all for visual, and then I roll it for the spine. I find its deep spine, I mark its spine, and then off I go and start building.
Okay.
Nice. That is the spine.
That's the spine.
That's
Thank
the
you.
spine.
Thanks. Good explanation.
Nice.